Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Nvidia founder and CEO, Jensen Huang.
Happy New Year! Welcome to CES. I have so much to tell you guys, so I'm going to get going. Usually at CES, I talk to you about self-driving cars and gaming. Today, I'm going to focus completely on gaming. Either you're excited about gaming, or you're excited not to learn about artificial intelligence, robotics, and self-driving cars. But anyways, we have so many announcements in self-driving cars and autonomous vehicles as well. Over the course of the next several days, you're going to hear a lot of news about our next generation of autopilot technology, how we're applying artificial intelligence to the user experience of the car, and how we're using augmented reality to provide feedback to the driver while they're in the car, while the car is driving by itself. We're also announcing a whole bunch of partnerships. I ran down that hall, and I'm breathless. That's it, I'm done. And so we're also announcing a whole bunch of partnerships with map makers all over the world. Between our technology and their technology, we're able to drive in so many different places in the world, whether it's Europe or Japan or China or different places in the United States. So be sure to go see our booth. There's all kinds of amazing technology. Today, I'm going to focus on gaming. The GPU revolutionized modern gaming. There's absolutely no question about it. If you take a look at the last 15 years, which I've shown you a brief history, visual history of computer graphics for video games and some of the most important games that have come out over the course of the last decade and a half, and the technology that made it possible, GPU was at the center of all of that. The fundamental technology that enabled all of this advance was rasterization. Basically taking geometries in a virtual 3D world and translating those geometries, those triangles, into dots on your screen called pixels. That translation process, converting triangles in 3D space to pixels in 2D space, screen space, is called rasterization. Rasterization is incredibly efficient. Computers do it incredibly fast. On top of that, we applied texture mapping that allowed us to put interesting decals on top of three-dimensional objects. If you take a look at Battlefield 1942, this is one of the favorite games of my kids and I. 2002, if you take a look at that video game, basically, there are texture maps on top of 3D geometries. And it was incredibly fun. It was groundbreaking technology at the time. But as you can see right now, it was very chalky. Lighting effects weren't right. There were very few shadows, if any at all. But yet it was incredibly fun. Gears of War took advantage of a technology we invented about 15 years ago called programmable shading. Programmable shaders allowed us to take that pixel that's on your screen and apply a complete large program to it. A really, really flexible program that allowed us to apply all kinds of interesting special effects. Epic, the creators of Fortnite, applied two basic technologies on top of what was available at the time. And one of them was called light mapping, light baking. Basically what they did was they applied the techniques of making video games to the creation of the textures. They did global illumination, beautiful lighting in advance of creating the textures. And then they baked the lighting into the textures. As a result, you could see all kinds of interesting shadows that emerged. They applied also on top of that this thing called pixel shaders that we invented that allowed them to create bumpy and shiny type of effects. Notice how beautiful Gears of War was. Crysis in 2007 was a groundbreaking piece of technology, CryEngine. What they did was they applied really, really fantastic new technologies and took programmable shading to the next level so that we could take these realistic worlds outside, where it's very difficult to bake. Whereas you could bake light inside a room like this and then put that essentially into a texture map, it was very difficult to do that outside in the dynamic world. There's a lot more geometry, light's changing all the time. As a result, shadows are changing dynamically. They use depth of field to take what appears to be in the distance and what appears to be close by, and the close by objects just popped. Screen space ambient occlusion is basically that little dark shadow at the creases of geometries that you see, where that little tiny piece of geometry lacks the exposure to light. Crysis was a groundbreaking piece of game, and as a result, video games really took a giant step up. Battlefield 3 took it to another level, applied that basic technology, added tessellation, so geometries were really, really rich. We saw no more facets on most of the characters, and when there were explosions, physics were applied, computational physics. Like a supercomputer, physics algorithms were applied so that buildings would crumble, there would be wonderful smokes and particles, and Battlefield 3 was groundbreaking visuals. Battlefield 5 took it yet to another level with a technology called photogrammetry, essentially taking pictures meticulously of the world. Taking pictures meticulously of the world and de-lighting it, taking the lights out of it. And what you have left is this beautiful image of the real world, which is then applied as a texture map. That texture map, then applying with all of this great technology and pixel shading, turned into what we see as Battlefield 5. It basically looks like a photograph, and you're in this world interacting with it. It obeys the laws of physics, and it obeys the conservation of energy. So what looks inside this room, inside this world, is physically accurate, what we call physically based rendering. You look at the course of the last 15 years, the technology has advanced tremendously, but yet you stand back and it still looks largely like a cartoon. And the reason for that is because there are three things that are kind of largely missing. There are three things that are largely missing. Reflections aren't right. Shadows aren't right. And refractions are really, really hard to do. These three lighting effects are really hard to do in rasterization. And yet we apply all kinds of amazing tricks to work around them, but it's just really, really hard to simulate the effects of light by starting from a geometry, because you have to start from the light. And that's where ray tracing comes in. About 30 years ago, one of our researchers, Turner Whitted, invented a technology and wrote a paper on iterative ray tracing, and it's taken over 3 decades for the entire industry working together to try to find a way to do it in real time. Tracing a light from your eyes into the world, from your eyes because it's the most clever and the most energy efficient way of doing it, instead of from the light. You trace it from your eyes, only the things that you see. Where it intersects a triangle or an object, it would then follow to the next point of light, whether it's reflected from another object or from a light source. And every single time light touches that geometry, it would affect the color of the pixel, the lighting of the pixel that comes to your eyes. One ray at a time, we would trace it into the world. And just by doing that, which is basically simulating the laws of physics, the way that light works, and if we capture the materials, we capture the light transport behavior of the medium, we capture the geometry, and if we could do this fast enough, shadows just appear, just like it does in the real world. Lighting just works. Reflection just works. Materials look rich. It just works. No light baking is necessary. No faking is necessary. It just works. That's the beauty of ray tracing. However, the computational requirement is just daunting. And it's taken us 3 decades to get here. And let me show you some of the inventions that we think will be necessary to take it to the next level. And so if you take a look at the top, reflections on ray tracing. RTX on, notice everything is reflected as you would expect. The Rubik's Cube reflecting on the ground, in the mirror, in the sphere. And when we turn, oh, may I do it again? I didn't go fast enough. Did I? How do I do that? Hey, Patrick, help me. I know we're being broadcasted. It's okay. We're among friends. How do I go back? Do I go back? Or do you go back? Okay. This is what happens when you don't rehearse. Okay, so reflections, RTX on, notice everything just works nicely. In the case of rasterization, it uses this thing called a screen space reflection. So it basically takes what is drawn into the screen, into the frame buffer, as the reflection map. And if you can see it on the screen, then it could use it as a reflection. Unfortunately, the things in the back of that Rubik's Cube, you can't see. And therefore, as a result, it can't be used for screen space reflection. And so the back of the Rubik's Cube, which is being reflected into the mirror, because the mirror can't see the back of, using rasterization, can't see the back of the Rubik's Cube, it can't use it for a reflection map. The same thing in that little tiny shelf on that mirror, if I were to turn off RTX off, you would notice that it's broken. Another thing that ray tracing solves is shadows. This right here is called the umbra. Umbra is a Latin word for the eclipse, otherwise known as the shadow. In the case of rasterization, it simulates a shadow by essentially drawing the projection of the shadow on the ground into a geometry. And it does it by using a point light. In the case of area light, some of that light goes to this side, some of that light comes to this side, and as a result, the umbra and the penumbra, the partially occluded parts of the shadow, are not crisp and clear. I wish this would go over again so I can show you. As a result of using ray tracing, we can now have soft shadows. Global illumination. Global illumination is necessary when you don't pre-bake the lights. If you pre-bake the lights, if the world changes on you in the video game, all of a sudden your pre-baked lights don't work. And so notice, this is RTX off. And when the building falls apart, the lighting is just wrong. RTX on, when the building falls apart, it still works. Okay? One of the things that you notice in most video games is the animation is really, really hard to do. And the reason for that is because the world is completely infinite. It's different everywhere you go. And now, because you want to have destructive geometries and transforming geometries, you never know exactly what world you're physically going to be interacting with. Motion capture is nearly impossible for that entire diverse, infinite different degrees of freedom. We use artificial intelligence to train the agent how to navigate. So this is a piece of work from the University of Edinburgh, and the researchers trained an AI how to animate. Facial rendering is one of the ultimate challenges. And the reason for that is because the way the area light affects the face, soft shadows, the occlusions, somehow you see just slightly into the mouth. That's possible because of global illumination. Your skin is semi-translucent, so refraction, the ultimate versions of refraction, called subsurface scattering, all of those effects apply. And then, of course, we want to animate the face. The combination of all of those effects makes it super hard to do with rasterization. That's one of the reasons why most of the video game characters look a little bit chalky and like cartoons. In the future, we could use ray tracing and deep learning and artificial intelligence to make faces that look very human-like. And of course, image processing. Artificial intelligence has the ability to learn what is the right image to synthesize. And maybe as a result of that, we could use lower resolution textures, less amounts of textures, and use artificial intelligence to synthesize the virtual world because, quite frankly, it's natural anyways. And so AI could use it to synthesize higher resolution images. AI could use it to synthesize textures and synthesize all kinds of interesting geometries that we can explore within. AI and ray tracing are two fundamental pieces of technology that we believe will define the next generation of computer graphics. from now on, when Paul says 1.5 minutes, I'm going to believe him. Last time he said 1.5 minutes, it was actually another 5 minutes. And then he said, then all of a sudden, Cheryl was calling my name on the incredible. So we invented a new computer graphics technology to enable the next generation of graphics. We call it RTX, the Nvidia RTX. In order to enable the next generation of computer graphics, in addition to rasterization and compute shaders, we had to add 2 new ways of computing. One is ray tracing, the ability to trace a ray through a complex world and do it as fast as possible. And then number 2, artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence for the synthesis of worlds, synthesis of images, synthesis of animation. These 4 key technologies are going to form the foundation of the future of computer graphics. What now the industry is calling, leaders in the industry are now calling hybrid rendering, to combine all of these different types of technologies to generate the final scene and to generate the final AI world, the virtual world. We call it the Nvidia RTX. It took 10 years for us to reach here. For the last 3 years, we've been working with the industry to create this entire stack, building the foundational technology, integrating it with all of the APIs available in the world, extending it for ray tracing, extending it for AI, and then integrating it into game engines like UE4 and Unity. We then built a brand new GPU to power this new rendering system, the Nvidia RTX. We call this new GPU Turing. The Turing architecture basically consists of 4 things. The first thing, of course, is the GPU itself, the Turing GPU. The second is a brand new shader architecture. The shader architecture of Pascal has floating point engines on top that are either doing floating point, shaders on top that are doing floating point or integer, but not at the same time. It has L1 cache, shared memory that are separate, and it has a 3 megabyte L2 cache. In the case of Turing, we made it possible for us, we doubled the amount of computational units so that we can do integer or floating point at the same time, and floating point at the same time, and we unified the L1 cache and the register files so that they could be much more fungible. As a result, potentially, depending on applications, adjusted to be twice as big as the Pascal generation. In the case of L2 cache, we doubled its size. We added a brand new engine called Tensor Cores. Tensor Cores has the ability to operate on the deep learning network's fundamental operation of linear algebra, A times B plus C, 4x4 linear matrix, linear algebra matrices at the speed of light. It can operate on 4x4 linear algebra matrices, A times B plus C, in one single clock. And it could do it across a whole bunch of modules. And so basically, hundreds of tera floating point operations per second could be processed in one single clock. Okay? We call it the new Tensor Core. And then lastly, in order to do ray tracing, we have a dedicated functionality called the RT core, the ray tracing core, that basically flies through this data structure called the bounding volume hierarchy, which describes the geometric world and deals with all of the intersections of which triangle is hit by the ray and what other rays are spawned from it. That is called the RT core. These 4 characteristics describe the Turing architecture. The performance, the throughput is incredible compared to Pascal. Pascal starts out with the largest version of it, which is now in the Titan XP, and Turing starts out with the largest version of it, which is in the Titan RTX, what some people call T-Rex. These 2 largest chips is what the entire family of Turing and Pascal are derived from. In the case of Pascal, the largest chip is 11.8 billion transistors, almost 500 millimeters squared, has an I/O of 11 gigabits per second using the fastest memory at its time called G5X. In the case of Turing, 18.6 billion transistors, 754 millimeters squared, and 14 gigabit per second, the fastest memory you can use today, called the G6. These two dies is what the entire family is derived from. And if you take a look at these two dies and their computational throughput, you can think of it this way. The compute of Pascal, here we go. The compute shaders of Pascal is 12 teraflops. In the case of Turing, it's 16 plus 16. 16 teraflops, trillion floating point operations per second, and 16 trillion integer operations per second. The shared memory and the register files is 12 megabytes large. In the case of Turing, 25 megabytes. In the case of L2, 3 megabytes to 6 megabytes. Basically, Turing has twice the basic throughput of computational compute horsepower. And if you then add on top of it the 2 new processor cores for tensor processing and ray tracing, you get, in the case of Turing, 130 trillion operations per second and 11 gigaarrays per second. Now, it's possible for us to use Pascal to do both of those things. And the reason for that is because Pascal is a general purpose compute program accelerator. And so it could run tensor operations, just about 1/13 the performance, about 1/10 the performance. In the case of ray tracing, it could also run ray tracing. However, it would have to run it at about 1/10 the performance. You take all of this computational capability and you put it inside this compute framework we call RTX, and on top of the driver called DXR, accelerating driver called DXR, and then integrating it into the Unreal Engine, we can then apply that to do amazing things. This is what I'm going to show you is a demo we've shown you before, except we've made some refinements, if you will. So let's enjoy this. Ladies and gentlemen, everything you just saw, all the lightings, all the shadow, all the animation, everything, all the ray tracing, 100% of it was in real time. This is not a movie. This is next generation graphics. This is what RTX enables. This new form of computer graphics that brings together rasterization for the things that it can do very, very well, ray tracing for the things that it just simply can't do, artificial intelligence that I'm going to talk about later, and, of course, programmable shading that we invented 15 years ago. We could change the time of day, we could change the lighting effects. It just works. All the reflections just work, and the self-reflections work. You could see the reflection on his armor from his arms. And it doesn't matter how you rotate the camera, it doesn't matter what moves around it. The lighting works, the shadow works, and the reason for that is we're simulating light, and it should behave accordingly. Sean, that's fantastic. Everybody, that's great work. Hey guys, let's put a hand together for the engineers and the artists of NVIDIA. Thank you. Thanks, guys. And so that's a demonstration of what's possible in just really a few short months when RTX came to life and what we've been able to do to demonstrate its full potentials. Notice how incredibly physically real it looks. All the materials look so realistic. The lighting looks so realistic. Because our eyes are so acute and we pick out such small details, if the shadows are off, the reflections are off, the lighting's off, we notice right away that something is wrong. This is the next generation of graphics. This is the beginning of next gen. Our partners have been working with us to advance this. And working with Industrial Light and Magic, Epic, who is the creator of Fortnite, the creator of the Unreal Engine, and the engineers at NVIDIA, we were able to bring together all of the pieces of technology to enable this new platform, this next-gen platform powered by RTX. And I won't show the full demo, but I'll show you a short video clip of what that looks like. If you go to our booth, and of course it's all over the web, this particular demo is just so inspiring, and it shows you what's possible with RTX.
What's the story with all the elevators lately? I heard Kylo Ren destroyed the one over in D sector. Who's ever in charge of this place should be transferred to Hoth. What? What? You think she heard us?
The amazing thing, isn't that incredible, guys? Let's put our hands together for all the engineers that worked on it. The reflections, the self-reflections, all of the dynamic reflections, all happening in real time. And so if you look at the shadows, you look at the reflections, they just all look quite normal. The materials look normal, and the reason for that is because it's being simulated properly. Another example that we demonstrated, this one I think we did at SIGGRAPH just in August, was another piece of work that we did with Epic and the folks at Porsche to celebrate their big anniversary. Guys, let's play it.
The speed of light, a universal constant, never diminishing, never ending. "70 years of unrelenting progress.
This is a video, however, in my opinion, it looks better in real time because the resolution's higher. And what's amazing is that the geometry of that car is not a video game car. It's a full geometry of the real car. And the materials are captured physically accurately, and all of the lighting and all the shadows and the global illumination, all done in real time. Just an amazing piece of engineering. Let me show you now, this This is work that's being done by one of the video gamers, Munfest, in Eastern Europe. And this is really a fun demo. If you look, when we show it to you, you can see that some of the stuff is just really, really amazing. And this is the indication of what next generation gaming is going to look like. Mark, are you going to do this one?
Yep.
Okay, so this is what USSR is was potentially going to turn out to be. Is that right?
That's right.
And so what's really amazing is notice how crisp this is. This can't be a video. This is in real time. Look at this. Everything is in real time. And RTX on, RTX off. Notice the reflections were all broken. And the reason for that is because screen space doesn't allow us to reflect what is behind the object. Notice the soft shadows. The soft shadows result because of an area light. The combination of umbra and penumbra causes the soft shadows to look so exquisite. And that just happens with ray tracing. No shadow maps necessary. There's an area light just underneath this robot, and it's interacting with the light, and it's combined with the light of the head, all being spun in real time. There's a reflection of a curved surface. Reflecting off of a curved surface is super hard to do, really hard to fake. And screen space reflection simply breaks. There's another scene. You're seeing reflection, and refraction of that, I guess, what would have been an aquarium. Reflection and refraction. Again, the soft shadows that you notice. Caustics. Looks fantastic. Okay. Wow, I don't know whose lab this is, but it's kind of creepy. Ladies and gentlemen, developers at Munfest. It took 10 years to figure out how to do ray tracing fast enough. And if not because of a groundbreaking piece of work about 7 years ago called deep learning, I don't think we would have been able to realize it in totality. But none of this is possible without the partnership with all of the industry to do so. And so I want to thank Cam and his team at Microsoft, Tim Sweeney and his team at Epic, Natalia's team at Unity, and Tim's team at Frostbite. All of these amazing engineers work together to create what is now the entire stack for this new form of computer graphics that many call hybrid rendering, what we called RTX. One of the pieces of technology essential to making all of this possible is AI. And so now the question is, how is AI applied to the future of computer graphics? Let me give you an example. This is a piece of technology we called DLSS. Basically, with DLSS, what we're trying to do is this. Well, first of all, AI. AI is a machine, a software, that learns from experience. It learns from experience to predict the future, to make a prediction about the future, make a prediction about something. And so what we're doing here is that we're teaching this AI, and we call this AI DLSS. DLSS, it's a very large piece of network, trillions of operations, artificial intelligence network. This piece of software is going to write itself. And it's going to write itself, develop itself, it's going to reconfigure itself, adjust itself, learn by itself, on top of the supercomputer we built called the DGX-2. This DGX-2 has 16 processors in it, 16 GPUs in it, and we have racks and racks of these working away, learning how to predict the perfect frame. It learns from ground truth. Ground truth is 64 times the resolution, 64 samples per pixel. So this picture is beautiful. It learns that that picture should look like this. And wherever it's wrong, we send it back. It's called back propagation. We send it back, and then we give it another try. And it tries and tries and tries and tries again. And it iterates and iterates and iterates again on top of the supercomputer, and runs for days on top of the supercomputer, a whole bunch of them. And we're teaching it one frame after another frame after another frame of all different kinds of images. Some of it outside, some of it from this particular style of image, some of it is photographic, some of it's cartoony, all these different types of styles. And it learns from all of this great content what it should look like, what it should look like. And then one day, we give it an image, and it goes through this neural network called DLSS, and ideally what comes out of it is a beautiful image. Ideally what comes out of it is a beautiful image. And the reason why it's a beautiful image is because if I gave you a low-res image, I bet in your mind you could figure out what the high-res image would look like. And the reason for that is because we've learned over years what it should look like, based on the few data points that you were given, what the perfect image should look like. In fact, you could even fill in missing pixels. There could be entire blotches of stuff that's missing, and we could still, because we're intelligent, we could still infer what is likely the right pixels to put there. We call this DLSS. This is the neural network that we created to improve an image. If we were successful in doing this, we could render the original image at a slightly lower resolution, run it through DLSS, and have it put out a larger resolution, and it would look fantastic. Not only would it look fantastic, because it goes through our tensor core processor, it would also do it so fast, it could actually improve the performance. Now, theoretically, suppose we could do AI infinitely fast, and I could render at 1080p and create an image that looks even better at 4K, then what I've essentially done is taken a 10 teraflops GPU, for example, and made it perform like a 30 or 40 teraflops GPU. That's the dream, okay? That's the dream. If we could figure out a way to apply artificial intelligence to predict the perfect pixel because it learned it, then we could render at a lower resolution, and it could create higher resolution, effectively increasing performance and potentially even increasing quality at the same time. Well, we've been playing with this for, you guys have seen us play with this now for several months, and we're making rapid improvement. And just recently, one of the leading developers in the world saw the work, and they were so excited by it, they're going to adopt it for an upcoming title, one of the most anticipated titles, and I can't wait to see it. It's a title called Anthem, and it's a bunch of characters, and they're freelancers, and they jump into these exoskeletons that they call Javelin, and it's an action RPG, and it's just really fantastic looking game. I can't wait to play it. And the folks at BioWare made a trailer for you guys.
Technology has always helped us unleash our creative potential by giving players more immersive experiences than ever before. In Anthem, head out into a chaotic and beautiful world. Fly across wondrous lands in your Javelin exosuits. Confront deadly creatures.